Can we talk about emotions and how that's related to how we show up with sex? Because
Absolutely.
there's a biological part of your body changes, but
Mhm.
also the way you feel is tied into how you show up in the bedroom. And as I'm getting older, for me personally, it's
Yeah.
more so like that. But when I was younger, it was much more physical, and now it's much
Mhm.
more emotional.
Mhm.
And with the with the pandemic,
Yes.
feeling, this like numbness, even if we're still
Mhm.
having sex, just overall like, but it doesn't feel like it has that edge,
Yep.
or feeling overwhelmed. Um, for us, we bought a home this year. We were remodeling,
Mhm.
and between all, whenever it feels like management, like too much management and overwhelm in life, that
Yeah.
also affects our sex life personally. I would love to talk about that because I know a lot of people don't talk about that and they feel like something's wrong. Like
Yes.
we haven't had sex in a long time, something's wrong, and they don't know how to fix it or how to
Mhm.
get back to a better rhythm.
Yeah.
So, can we talk about? I mean, you have said so many people have come to you
Yeah.
last year and a half saying how
Oof.
numb they feel.
Numb, desire in the toilet. Or like they'll talk to me a lot about how maybe their masturbation hasn't changed all that much or will go up and down, but hasn't it's still been something that they have been doing. And then, but then when they're talking about any kind of desire or physical activity with their partners, they're like, oof, that feels like work. And there's some legitimacy to this experience, right? Like, yes, our emotions matter big time, but w- this is a little further than that. We've sat in a year and a half of our threat system going off. Like, our threat system, which is we have this wonderful part of our brain that does several things, but one of its primary things that it does is keep us safe and evaluate threat. Is there a cheetah in the room? Because your body will only do one of three things when there's a cheetah in the room. It will lay down and play dead, it will fight back, or it'll run away, fight or flight or freeze. And when your body has determined that cheetah is in the room and is a threat, you're not pooping, you're not having sex. Your eating is going to be erratic, whether good or bad, or it doesn't. I'm not saying like eating good foods or bad foods. I'm just talking about like how you understand your hunger cues. All of that is impacted by fight or flight or freeze. We've literally been sitting in it for a year and a half.
Oh my gosh.
And so, of course, we don't feel like having sex. Of course, it feels a little bit like work. So, I've been encouraging my people to really, really break it back down to basics. I want you to sit adjacent to sex. I don't even want you to think about like put sex like that is what's happening tonight. That might actually you putting that on the table might be too much overwhelm. Like, oh, nervous system is tanked because of all of the shit that I've been through today. I may not have a lot left at the end of the day. It may mean also changing your ideas around when you're gonna have sex in the day. Waiting until 10 o'clock at night when you're both, like, staring at your phones or you're both looking at the Netflix, it's not gonna fucking happen. It's just not. And expecting yourself to be able to do that, I think it almost sets you both up to fail, right? Like, or however many people are involved, like, it just sets you up to fail. So if you get the beautiful opportunity of working from home and you're still enjoying that, I'm so glad so many of us are getting to know this wonderful thing of working from home because I've been doing so my practice has been online for about 4.5 years. So working from home, it's just for me awesome. But that being said, like maybe lunchtime sex is a better option, right? Maybe you might have the ability to have a little bit more energy because you haven't sat through that entire day of stress hormones and uh, dealing with the 15th Zoom call where you have turned off your camera because you're rolling your eyes so hard in the back of your head. Like, it's okay to try to put yourself adjacent to sex first. So that could look like um, sitting next to each other and one of you reading the other erotic story with no expectation that anything was going to happen any further. Because then you're just sitting adjacent to sex. And, if it so happens that somebody gets really excited and checks in with their partner, like, oh, hey, like this is helping me start the gas to the car, right? Like this is getting the gas to the engine. This is helping. Then maybe you keep going. But that's not the point of the exercise at all. It's to just get yourself adjacent to sex so that it's not the expectation that we have to do all the things, all of the mating ritual, right? Like, no, we're gonna just sit next to sex and then think about, okay, maybe that we sit next to sex on lunchtime instead of 10 o'clock trying to watch Netflix.
I really love that because you're right. Sometimes when you feel like we got to do it, it makes it
Mhm.
worse. It makes it
Yes.
worse. So, yeah, that expectation. And you mentioned of the erotic story. I have a question about porn.
Yes. Here for it.
Is it healthy for couples to watch porn together or even solo? Because I have my personal take on it. I think everyone's different. I do
Mhm.
feel like the type of porn content that's out there can desensitize. That's been my experience with it.
Mm.
And it's usually, for me personally, it's better to not watch it or not watch it a lot
Mhm.
because I feel desensitized.
Mhm.
And also, I think for the younger generation too, that's a lot of them, that's their introduction to how to do sex. And some of the stuff that's out there, I'm like, that's pretty extreme with what their
Mhm.
expectations are. So, is porn healthy for a
Mm.
couple and for individuals?
Mm. Okay, so this is a nuanced thing because there are some people, I'm gonna give you lots of examples. There are some people who've experienced a significant amount of sexual trauma in their life, and seeing certain kinds of pornography really does trigger them. That it's not necessarily a good spot for them to sit. But is that person doing really well? I'm thinking of people on my caseload or people I've seen or stories I've heard, and people that we've tried to find different avenues for sexy material. That's how I see this. I think we have an image when we think of porn of hardcore, everybody looks like they're kind of in pain because they make strange faces because they're acting. And they're in crazy situations or doing things that on average many humans are not even familiar with themselves, or when they do try to do those things they're like, oh, this doesn't feel or look like how I thought it would, because you don't have like five cameras around you telling you exactly how to hold your body or look at a thing or how to do your face. Like, if anybody ever saw like the background of how porn is made, they would understand that like it's a lot of the things you see in porn are fantasy, they're performance. Porn is performance. Porn is not what average humans do in the bedroom. Does that make it inherently bad? No, the fuck it doesn't. Guess what? We've been putting porn on shit since we could do it on walls. We literally would like have turned any kind of technology that we've ever had and figured out a way to distribute sexual material. Like before, again, it was on strips of fabric. It was we actually used chisels and put it on walls.
So
And
it's
later it
natural.
was magazines and then it became the internet, right? Like the reality is that sexual material is something that we do as humans. But should we absolutely have some guidelines around it? Yes. The internet also is the Wild West. And I it is far less the Wild West it was than when it first started, right? Like we didn't have, oh man, I'm making myself the elder millennial that I am. Like we didn't have the Google, but when you did use a search engine and you put in a term, you would almost immediately get porn. That's not the case anymore. That's not the case on the Google. That's not the case on whatever Microsoft's version of that is now these days. Right? Like the way that we access sexual material is quick, but it's also fairly targeted and very specific parts of the internet, right? That being said, we do need to quit acting as if like kids don't have access to the internet at a very young age. We need to quit acting as if they have questions and they have the Google, that they're not going to go then ask the Google those questions. And so I tell my kids, and I'll just be very clear about this, the internet does not care about how old you are. So if you have a question, I would love for you to ask me first so I can tell you at your level, and not all of the things that you may not be ready to see on the Google. Because Google Images exists and it will show you everything you have put there. And so I help them make boundaries with themselves, if that makes sense.
Yes. And talking about boundaries, I think communicating boundaries for adults or whoever's having the
Yes.
sex boundary talk is so important, I think. It's
Yes.
laying out expectations, and I
Mhm.
just think it's so important. And myself and a lot of I've had talks with girlfriends, sometimes you might find yourself in a uncomfortable situation, and
Mhm.
some people, they're not comfortable or they don't know how to
Mhm.
express those boundaries. So number one, when do you think is a good time to have a talk about sex boundaries and expectations? And then what are some questions that you can ask someone to know about theirs?
Oof. So the thing I say to my clients all the time is that the minute you express a boundary is the minute that you will know the person who is the most uncomfortable with those boundaries, because they will protest the most. So, that being said, let's use porn as an example, right? People have lots of unwritten rules or unsaid rules around porn or masturbation, and they almost never, I have maybe met maybe one or two couples that have ever in my career been able to even start this conversation. But it absolutely should be a conversation if you have had and will be having sex together. You should absolutely have an understanding of how both of you see masturbation and how both of you see sexual material. Does that mean that both of you need to be sharing exactly what your porn history is? Like, open up my incognito tab, see here, this is what I'm watching. No, you don't need to be doing that, because guess what? There's a lot of fantasies that we have in our head that we don't necessarily want to have happen in real life, because of what it would take to make those things happen in real life, because it takes a lot of steps sometimes. Doesn't mean that some of those fantasies can't be tried on with proper consent, where you ask permission and you figure out a way. But that being said, like, when people are fantasizing about group sex, which by the way is one of the things people are fantasizing a lot about, Dr. Justin Lee Miller's research is really great around this. He wrote a book called Tell Me What You Want, and it's all about sexual fantasies and how we see them, how we experience them. And one of the primary things where a lot of us are fantasizing about is either two or more. So we're fantasizing about us and two or more people. Does that mean we all want to have like polyamorous relationships and group sex all the time? No, not at all, actually. It's more than anything, the theme of that fantasy, which is that all of the attention and desire is on you. And we all are fantasizing about that. And that those lovers know exactly what to do and how to touch you and how to do all the things. And most of the time this is the really interesting part to me. Most of the time, people in our fantasies don't really have faces. They're not, it's kind of like akin to dreams. Like, you kind of know who it is, but you're not focused on that. Duh, because you're focused on all the pleasures happening in front of you. So that's a long-winded way to say, like, there when it comes to boundaries, being able to express, hey, these are some of the things I like. What are some of the things you like? This is where my limits are. That is really a really, really important skill to have, regardless of where we're talking about sex or we're talking about your emotions. or how things go throughout the day, and conflict. Most of the time, I think what sex and the conversations with my clients does is it reveals to me with a bonfire all of the other places in a relationship where information is not being clearly communicated, where boundaries are being crossed, where someone is not knowing how to recover from a conflict. Sex shows me very quickly, because we're so afraid of it. We have such a hard time talking about it. It shows me very quickly where the other cracks are in the
Uh,
relationship. Because we're not as evolved as we'd like to think we are. And we love to say we compartmentalize. That's some bullshit. I want to know whose brain actually has like cute little compartments in it, like a cute little box with organization. Like the brain actually doesn't work that way at all. And our emotions begin in our body and then move to our mind. And so we actually take in a lot of data and make a lot of assumptions based on that data. Those assumptions we have to challenge, but those assumptions in their nature are deeply tied to our threat system. We developed those assumptions and our abilities to watch patterns so that we could protect ourselves from threats. But the trouble is that we have a really hard time intervening when we generalize a threat, like to our partner or to a friend or to a coworker, where we assume that we know what is happening in front of us, and then we don't clarify if that's actually true.
Sorry, my brain's going. I mean, this can get really complicated, but I'm just,
Oh yeah, you're
well,
good.
it's the self-awareness of what you need as well before you can even communicate it to someone else. Because a lot of people
Yep.
don't even know like that they're building up resentment in a relationship, and these emotional bricks get placed up, and then you realize, it's affecting how you come together in the bedroom, and you don't know how to resolve it. So that's why I'm really big on self-awareness, and then
Yes.
communication skills too.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you're out here spreading that gospel. And the reality is, no matter how self-aware we are, no matter how much self-actualization we chase, we're going to fuck it up because we're human. That's what we do. We do it good. That's something we're really great at, is fucking shit up. But I was just having a conversation with a client today about how learning to repair with people is an incredible skill to learn. And it also helps you align yourself with your own values better. It's deeply uncomfortable. It does not feel good to put down boundaries, express our feelings, learn how to be vulnerable, own our shit when we fuck up. It's incredibly difficult to do. That's why we all avoid it so much, because it feels uncomfortable. But the thing is, on the other side of that discomfort is resolution. Whereas when you avoid it and push it down and push it away, there's never any resolution. And you're just stuck with that feeling and stuck with that conversation and stuck with that dynamic until it happens again.
What are some of the most common reasons that you hear about or you discover why a couple has stopped having sex? Is resentment one of them? Not feeling safe?
I mean, those are definitely those are pieces, but oftentimes when people stop having sex, it's pretty gradual, to be completely honest with you. It is a gradual distancing of touch. It is a gradual distancing of engagement psychologically. So like being curious and rooting for each other when each of you is in your element. There's just this gradual pulling apart that happens. And of course, sex is part of that. And then when I'm pulling a couple, sometimes it's them pulling each other. Sometimes it's me pushing. Like, hey, you said you want to do this thing. Come on. Come on. It's starting to touch each other again, to walk by each other in the kitchen and put your hand on their back, to, if they're okay with it, smack them on the butt when they walk. also, the other thing that seems to happen for many couples is that they get real in their heads about feeling inadequate or not enough, or that they desire their partner doesn't desire their body or doesn't desire them anymore. So my wonderful colleague coined this term. Her name's Amanda Luderman, for any of those who want to know more about it. It's called erotic empathy. It is the basic premise that your partner can feel completely differently about your body than you do. That if you are having a hard time because your partner walks past you and says, "Oh, I like your ass in them jeans," and you look at them and say, "No, my ass is too fat," or "No, I disagree." You can feel that way. You can validate your own feeling, and you can not invalidate your partner's experience of your body. You can say something like, "You know what? I'm glad you said that because I haven't been feeling that way." That doesn't invalidate your partner's expression of desire for your body. And it also doesn't invalidate your experience that sometimes it's hard to be in the bodies we're in.
Yeah, I asked that just because I've been hearing more from friends who have been married a long time or they're divorced. Like,
Yeah.
we haven't had sex in 3 years. One was over 10 years. And I'm like, this seems
Mhm.
like a more common thing than I thought. And
Yeah.
I sometimes when I'm scrolling social media, whenever there is some kind of post about sex, I see people have very strong opinions about sex, or like if it's something about frequency, there's people are just very judgy about it. Like, I don't know what's wrong with you. I'm screwing my wife 6 times a day.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
that's funny. The loudest person in the room is typically the most uncomfortable.
There is, you can see there's some kind of trigger there, because I just feel like with marriage, if you're with someone long term, life ebbs and flows.
It
That
does.
sometimes you're doing it a lot, other times you guys get caught up, and it's completely normal. It's completely normal, and I think it's so important to talk about, because I think some people just start to feel so uncomfortable, and they just don't know what to do when their sex life is affected or they don't feel fulfilled in that area.
The folks I work with are often terrified of what the answer is going to be, because they've told themselves a story about why. And it typically stars them, right? Like it typically stars themselves. It's like, I'm the reason they don't like me anymore. They don't find me attractive anymore. It's this. I saw if we're talking about a straight couple, I saw him looking at these girls on Instagram. Or I saw her looking at these dudes and liking these dudes' posts on Instagram. Y'all, if you had a conversation and said, "Hey, I've been struggling a lot, like connecting even with my own stuff. I'm having even a hard time feeling aroused to anything. It has nothing to do with you. I am having a hard time being even connected to desire in my own body." If you take that off the table, that it's that your partner is the problem or the behavior is the problem, and you start taking a look on the inside and realize, "Oh, you know what? Oh, I got some big fucking feelings," or "I feel like I have no feelings because I've been through hell and back." And what it would be like if you were to express that to your partner instead of assuming that either you've done something wrong or they've done something wrong.
I just wish everyone had access to a sex therapist. I just feel like, because I was just like, well, how, like, if people, this is great insight that we're having right now, just to kind of open it up, like, oh, we should be having these conversations, but to actually start doing it, right? Who's that going to be that first person to bring it up and, create that safety and to create real change?
Yeah.
So
I encourage people to do it in any way that they possibly can, that there's no right way. There's a really great, I need to come up with one so that I can make the money off of it every time I suggest this. But it's not anything I've ever created. It is not mine. These people do not pay me. But there is a game called We're Not Really Strangers. And they actually have a sex pack now. Like, if you really are terrified, it's okay to rely on other things for prompts. Shit, email me and I'll give you a couple ways to start the conversation. I don't care. Like, you can't break this. You can say to your partner, hey, I don't even know how to start this. I don't even know. Can we do this over? Can you sit in the other room and can we just do this over Snapchat so that I can think about what I want to say, send to you a video, and then send it to you? Can we start that way? Because I'm so uncomfortable. You can do that. And then move your asses into the same room and have the conversation face to face. But if you need to start in a different way, that's okay too.
So what I'm hearing is just trying. Like everyone's just trying their best.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, fuck.
Just try and doing something different too. Like you said, it doesn't have to be right, but that you're just trying. And
Yeah.
I always think just like mutual respect is a good thing to have in conversation and not bulldozing. I think I work with a lot of high performers, so they tend to want to bulldoze conversation. And uh, I've done a lot of work on myself in regards to communication, just because I wasn't taught good communication growing up and how to present things so that in general someone might receive it better and not feel attacked, or if they do, how to respond. That'll be a separate episode.
But I love that. I love that you've taken the time to learn those things, because it does. I would imagine, I don't want to speak for you, but I would imagine learning those skills has opened up how much information you get too from people.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. My all my friendships and relationships, relationship with my parents as well, have blossomed as soon as I learned to have better communication and listening skills as well.
yeah, when you slow down and actually start to listen for information rather than listening to respond, you start to really go, oh, I'm missing so much information. This person is either making a lot of assumptions about me or I'm making a lot of assumptions. Let me slow down here. Let me get better data. It's okay to play detective even in your own life.
Yes, I think that curiosity and again, like self-introspection too. Normally, of
Mhm.
course, there's stuff going on out here, but I'm like, it's usually whenever I'm like
Yes.
this, I'm like, okay, what's going on here?
Oh, before I forget, something I can do, and I can send it directly to you, and you can share it with other people. I've made a list, and connecting it back to our conversation about pornography or sexual material. I've made a list of websites and apps that are, for lack of a better way to put it, man, this is going to make me sound like I am of my hipster grown ass hippie age, but it's ethically sourced pornography. So pornography that we know that it's not coming from people who are being trafficked. We know that all of the orgasms are real,
Mm.
and that there's other offers from some of these apps. So like audio erotica, stories that you listen to rather than having the video component. If video is too much for you, say you do, like I described before, had like a sexual experience or sexual trauma that really is hard for you to have that kind of stimulation. It's okay to get sexual material in other ways. Also, other websites that have really great written sexual material. So I can send that to you so that you can send that out to folks that might need that.
Sure, that's amazing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to ask some questions that my listeners sent in, and I'm sure
Yes.
these are common questions that you get. How do you deal with different libidos in a relationship? Can it work if two people have different sex drives?
Hmm. Yes and no.
Long
My
term, can
clients,
it work?
my clients hate this answer. Libido differences can absolutely be mitigated. There does have to be a willingness from both partners to mitigate those things. Like, but there always is, and I try to help people remember, like, you can break up with people for any fucking reason you want. And if your libido is a very important part of that, like your desire is at a level where you want to be having sex every day or several times a day, that's an okay thing to want. And if your partner legitimately cannot meet you there, it is okay to break up. Let me just say that first. It's okay to break up. Two, there is also the many times we as humans will maybe give up importance of one thing to make something else important. Maybe actually for you as a person, feeling safe with your partner is more important to you than how many times you get to have sex during a week. So you may have a higher libido, but that safety part is so important to you that you're like, you know what, if I'm only having sex one time a week, or if I'm only having sex every other week, that's okay, because I can trust the safety of this person. That doesn't mean that that was a bad choice you made. It just means that it was a measured choice based on what your needs actually are. Does that kind of make sense to
It
you?
absolutely makes sense. So it's important to know your needs. I think,
Oh my
and where
gosh.
you're willing to bend and
Yes.
which parts are non-negotiable.
Absolutely. And negotiating frequency matters. I do think we do not like, as humans, we don't like to schedule sex, but the reality is that we may need to, especially if you've been in a long term relationship forever.
There's
And
kids.
kids, jobs, all the things happen, and we'll take all of the oxygen out of the air. That is what that life will do. And so sometimes you do have to say, no, we are carving out every single week. Thursday lunchtime is ours. We have sex first, because you don't have sex before you eat, y'all. Then eat the carbohydrates. Then you will lay down and not want to move. Like, don't put the carbohydrates before the sex, because then you won't want to move. Like, this is
Nap time.
I tell parents, especially new parents, all the time. Like, if you get a date night, sex first. Sex first. Don't
Some,
ask yourself to have any energy for sex later. That's mean. That's mean to both of you.
that is fantastic advice. I heard that somewhere else recently. I'm like, that is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, when you've actually got the energy for it, sit down, read each other an erotic story, or watch a wonderfully sex positive sexual video together, or tell each other your most embarrassing sex experience. Don't tell them about the partner, just tell them about the funny sex experience you had. And then maybe play. It's okay to play in sex. That's something we miss a lot. We get in this rut of it. Sex goes this very specific, like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, insertion of an orifice.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't have to go that way. And if we broadened our terminology a little bit, like expecting that sex has to end with somebody inserting something into something, that actually sex begins in the beginning of the day. It can start with somebody walking up to you and rubbing your butt. It can start much, much sooner than this very narrow focused 3 minutes of time that most people are focused on.
The next question. I get this question a lot. How important is it to be attracted to someone when you first meet them? What if you connect with them, but there doesn't seem to be sexual attraction? Can this change?
I mean, I think I think again we often look at this in a pretty narrow perspective, especially here in the States. Do you know how many people I have worked with who have been married for 30 years and their marriage was arranged? Like, we there are many, many people who have active sex lives in lots of different configuration of relationship, and for lots of different reasons. I think we often believe we have sex because we are attracted to somebody. We have sex for lots of fucking reasons, and expecting that you should get this fiery chemistry with somebody out the gate for every person that you may or may not want to have sex with, I think might be a mistake, because sometimes that fiery connection actually means that this person has a lot of red flags, and maybe you're attracted to intensity, and that intensity may not pay off in other ways in your relationship. There may be gaslighting later. There may be other kinds of intensity later. It doesn't mean that all attraction is going to end up that way. That's not what I mean. I just am asking people to take a little bit of a step back and ask themselves, okay, what are you truly attracted to? And if you are legitimately only attracted to a very specific type and it has to be this way, okay. But know that you might miss out on some other kinds of connection as a result of that.
That was me through like teens, 20s, like going after that fiery roller
Yeah.
coaster
Like every
intensity.
teenager and 20-year-old. Yeah.
And then it slowly started to change when I decided I wanted a long-term relationship, and there were certain other components that I wanted, like emotional safety.
I
Ended up
bet.
being,
I would bet more so. Sorry, I'm a therapist. I can't
oh,
always
no,
say
it's
that.
okay.
I bet it probably had more to do with that time in your life when you decided to turn inward.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, the timing of it.
And you started to understand that, oh, this is the things I actually like. These are the things I actually need.
Yes,
But
need.
the gift of our teenagers and our 20s, I don't think we should push away. Like, we don't have to find our longest term relationship when you are 18 years old. You don't have to do that. You don't. You also don't have to do that at 22. I got married, I was 23 years old. I think of that baby and I'm like, girl, how did you know? I don't know. I'm so glad that she did. She fucking lucked out. Lucked out. And I'm not kidding about that. I do not think I'm magic. I do not think because I'm a therapist that I have had, like, I think both of us had very early in our relationship a sense of not knowing how to do it. So we went to therapy together early.
That's,
And I think that helped us a shit ton.
and how long have you been together?
Whew, married for 14 years.
Wow.
But
Wow. You
I don't use that as the measure of other relationships. Because again, there's some of this that is luck, or
yes,
fate.
absolutely.
It happened. Like, however you want to call it. Like, it I do believe relationships can grow and change. But does every relationship you ever have need to be those long-term relationships for you to not learn something about yourself at that very moment of life? Relationships have that beautiful, unique quality to them.
Yeah, I agree. I always think approaching them with curiosity and what am I learning? For me,
Mhm.
that made dating a lot easier because I used to think like before I got married, before I figured it out, like, oh, dating's supposed to be fun. How do I make it fun? I always was trying to get it right. Like, what am I doing wrong
Yeah.
here? And it felt I was making it difficult for myself until I learned some things and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. And funny enough, I met my husband shortly after. I kind of learned to view relationships that way.
Yeah. Look at that. See that work. Then you can see them, right? It's less about that you when you get to that place of introspection that you end up like, oh, now this person will magically appear. No, ultimately you may not truly have been able to see that person or see
Yeah,
those qualities before.
absolutely.
You may
Absolutely.
not have been able to see that well of patience you have. I do want to say this. I am very grateful to have gotten to do that before dating apps. I have a friend and colleague. She is a certified dating coach, and so her and I have done interviews together for each other's shows, and we've talked a lot about like what. And I talk with my clients about this a lot, like what dating looks like now. And the apps, every single person I talk to about them, and every single person that talks to my friend, the dating coach, they hate it. They hate every part of it. And yet we as a culture have still expected us to go this way. and that this is how you meet people today. And I just have to ask, like, okay, if you hate it, is that the best way for you to find a person for you? If you fucking hate this, why are we
Oh,
doing it?
yes,
And then I
absolutely.
bring up this David dating coach for an important reason. Because we were just having a conversation about how these algorithms get to know us, right? And they get to know our preferences and things like that. Not even just in dating apps, but like I think TikTok is an excellent example of like when you're on TikTok, you will quickly find a community. You will find a thing that the AI will put
Yes,
you
it's so
where
smart.
you need to be. Very smart. But think about that. If you haven't worked on your things, if you haven't worked on your own red flags, your own communication errors, what is that AI on that dating app going to show you?
Flags.
So is that the best way for you to be fucking dating? Is that
Right.
it's only gonna show you shit that's gonna hurt you?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I always tell people, like, if you want to date and create the possibility of the relationship of your dreams, how important it is to stay open. Stay
Yes.
open. And a lot of times it that dream relationship might not look exactly how you think it's gonna look.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I started doing the introspection, I tapped into what I needed more emotionally, spiritually. Like, if you would have asked me, what do you think your future husband's gonna look like? I would have probably said, like, oh, probably like darker features, like Oscar Isaac. He's his actor. I'm like, probably something like that. That's what I thought. My
Beautiful.
husband
Beautiful.
does does not look, and he's so handsome. He's tall, salt and pepper, pale blue eyes, but he doesn't. I would have never imagined that. And
Yeah.
possibly, if I was swiping, is it possible I wouldn't have like seen him in that way or as quickly
Mhm.
as we met in person? I was waiting for an
Yeah.
Uber. It was very organic, but
Yep.
I saw him and immediately I got this feeling like, huh, that I was curious. And
Yeah.
I just think that staying open, and
Mhm.
exactly to what you said with the apps. If you don't like it, don't be on it.
Mhm.
You can, or if you think it's so, only go on it when you feel good. That's usually what I tell people. If you feel kind of good, go on it. If you don't, I think swipe, it makes it even worse. It's like
Yes.
depressing. Or balance it with, being social in other areas in real life. And then
Mhm.
also sometimes, you could just view it as another way of seeing what's out there. But I
Yeah.
think to be healthy about it.
I think that that idea of being social and understanding like what your likes and dislikes and what things truly matter to you. Before dating apps, a lot of the research when it came to like our mating rituals and things, we were meeting someone within a quarter mile of what we were doing every day. So that's about frequency, familiarity, and connection and similarity. We were also more likely to be with somebody who's our same attractiveness level, similar socioeconomic status, similar, like the similarities of what was going on was much more tight then because that's who we had access to. Now you are having a completely different pool of access, and it is changing our mating rituals, regardless of how you identify.
Mm.
It is changing those things. And so I just encourage people to think about how much permission do you want to give a machine to impact your dating relationships and mating rituals? How much do you want to take that control out of your own hands?
Mm. That's true. That's a great way to view it with the control, because it just seems it's like limited to what comes through versus if you intentionally go out there
Yes.
feeling more empowered and in
Yeah.
control.
And you're more likely to meet people that are like in that like similar things to you, that
Yes.
have similar values to you, that are interested in you'll have something to fucking talk about.
Yeah. Talk to people in person.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're out of time. I have really appreciated all the knowledge you have shared. If
I
people
appreciate
want
that.
to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
if you are interested in therapy from me or any of the therapists that work for me, because my entire practice is online, we serve multiple states at this point and we're always expanding. So that's mentalandsexualhealth.com. And that's the entire practice, easy enough to get a hold of us. To my website is Sex Talk with Erika. That's for the podcast and all of those things. And you can get a hold of me on any one of those things. I'm on TikTok. I'm on all of the
Oh, what's your Instagram handle?
Instagram's lame when it comes to handles. My God, Erika Miley therapy. It's annoying because I couldn't get. So, but TikTok, I'm way more active on TikTok. Sex Talk with Erika. And
Okay.
there's lots of, you can come give me all the snarky comments.
Oh, I love TikTok. Oh my gosh, TikTok, the comments on there. I'm kind of new to TikTok, but it's opened up this whole world for me.
Like I told you, that AI on TikTok, it is gonna find you. It is gonna find your community and put you in it. Like,
it is so interesting. I'm gonna look you. I didn't know that you were on there, but that I would imagine is actually a really good platform for you to be talking about sex.
Yes. Well, and it keeps me from being so long-winded.
60 seconds.